Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos podcast, a show where we talk about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a survivalist and a prepared individual in today's day and age. I'm your host, Chris Bartagone, ZP002. Back with me, as always, my co-host, Jamie Franks. Jamie, welcome back, man. It's been a minute.
It feels like it. I'm
It
sure
really has.
to the
And
listener, maybe it doesn't seem like that.
No. Well, to the listener, we're right on time all the time. Every week we get a show going out, guys, and we appreciate you all for listening. It's always great to get the feedback from people. Everybody knows. I think last week's show was the one with Paul Taylor, and then the week before that was actually the podcast, the audio only podcast that I did with Kyle down in Tennessee. And and I know that it got pushed out on Viking Tactics social media, and one of the guys that I know who runs one of the stores up in New Hampshire, he was like, dude, I'm only 10 minutes into this show and it's awesome. And I could probably have one of those with Kyle weekly, and it's just such a fun it's always such a fun conversation because he's got a bunch of different life experiences, just like having conversations with you. You've got your life experiences, and when we get to talking, it just continues to flow. Same thing with Paul. Like, I was talking to him last week, and 30 minutes into the call, I was like, well, here's the next podcast, just because we were both talking about what we had done a weekend ago about camping, and we both ran into a similar situation where, it did not go as planned. And so obviously when I love getting feedback, and I think actually when I was talking to you, you said something about your neighbor.
Yeah.
Was like, what was it you called her? What she was
I think I just said that she's definitely not in our demographic. She's
okay.
An older middle-aged lady that's she's actually from Germany.
That's right.
And
That's what you said.
Came to the US at some point, so she still speaks with a very heavy German accent. And but yeah, not a person that I think people would I don't think most people would look at her and think that she's in our demographic for this show. But
That's awesome.
I try to cross post stuff on my social media, and so something caught her eye, and she decided to listen to one of our podcasts, and I think it was the one we did about like survival food, or it was I don't know if that was a whole podcast by itself or if that was part of it, but she listened to that, and then she said something to me about it, and she was like, oh wow, that it made me realize how unprepared I am, and then that motivated her to listen to a few more of those podcasts, like along those same subjects, like the one we did about water, and I think the one we did about because she, in a conversation that I had with her, she referenced like the emergency bag, like your go bag.
Yep.
So
that's awesome. I mean, I absolutely love hearing stuff like that, especially from people you don't expect it from.
Right.
Folks that you would never think listen to the show. I'm a stats guy. Like, I like to see stats. It's always been numbers. Obviously, in my past, sales guy, you're always looking at numbers. I don't really check the stats on this show and how many listeners we have and how many listens we've had since in the 2 seasons that we've got so far. I enjoy doing this because it's fun to me. Like I just said, it's you and I having a conversation, which we do often just in front of a microphone with headset on, and I forget what we're doing. I mean, what I mean is I forget that we're doing this for a show, and because we're just having a conversation and throwing back information back and forth, which is fun. I don't think I've ever gone back and listened to one of our shows. I listened to it briefly when I do the post production and I put it up, but I don't go back and re-listen or watch,
I've listened to a couple of, like, I like listening to the ones with you and Paul, exactly for the reason you just said, because it's like I'm sitting in the back seat and you guys are the 2 adults talking, in the front seat.
Right.
I've gone back and listened to a couple of them, honestly, just, I guess, however you want to say it, just to make sure I didn't sound stupid, because there was a couple of times where I'll take myself down a rabbit hole, and then I'll go down another rabbit hole off of the rabbit hole, and then I'm not really sure if my point got lost or if I maintained any level of coherence. And so there's been a couple of times where I've gone back and listened. I think it was the one where we were talking. I can't even remember the name of the movie now. Not Day After Tomorrow. The movie on Netflix about the end of the world.
Oh, Leave the World Behind. Yeah,
Leave the World Behind. Yeah. Why did I think Day After Tomorrow? Yeah, because we went down some sidebars on those 2 episodes. So I've gone back and listened to a couple of them. Yeah, but I don't want to hurt my arm patting myself on the back, but I think we also do a pretty good job of covering like a really wide spectrum of stuff. Like I hope there aren't people out there that aren't listening. So if the people that aren't listening are listening,
right,
we talk about, it's not like we're not just sitting here talking about guns every day. I mean, I certainly probably could, but we talk about a lot of things that are along a wide spectrum that even my middle-aged female neighbor from Europe can get behind. So,
well, and that's one of the things, even when coming up with topics every week, we never want to make it just singular focused on one topic. And at the top of every show, I put it out there that says, this is a show that talks about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a survivalist and a prepared individual. And that can stem from gear to training, to mindset. And all of those are like all encompassing for those exact topics. But we do throw other stuff in there. We have talked about movies. We have talked about scenarios. We never get really too political on here, but I'm sure in the next 4 or 5 months, there's going to be some political banter that's going on. And I'm always very, very careful to do that, because you talk about a rabbit hole, you can just go right down that rabbit hole. I've found myself lately asking, because I've got Democrat friends, and you've got your Chads and your Bonnies out there, and they may not love the way that you think and whatnot, but it's, hey, listen, we're all here. But I've started to ask them, and I said, just take the name out of it for a second. And were the last 4 years of your life better than the 4 years before that?
Mm-hmm.
Take everything else out of it and just tell me that. And, I had one guy who's a real estate guy. He was like, well, the best 2 years I've had has been under the current administration. And listen, I'm not going to lie to you. They were for me as well. But take COVID out of that. And what I mean by that is business during the end of 2020 into 2021 was great. But did that have anything to do with who was in office, or did it have to do with a global pandemic scare? But so anyway, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole now, but I've asked people, I said, I asked that question, and they always veer kind of away from that, like they don't want to go out there and really go down that rabbit hole. But we try and stay away from, I guess, topics like that, but I don't know. At the end of the day, does it matter?
For me personally, I have to walk a line between what I feel is honest and then not being so political that it's going to turn anybody off. I think you and I both, because you and I, like, we became friends and we kind of met kind of in a conservative space. I think we probably assumed that each other were pretty conservative, but really, I mean, I would say other than that, I wouldn't have ever known your politics, because you and I both, even though I think it's fair to say we're both conservative leaning, we're certainly not on the what would have historically been called the extreme side of the spectrum. I mean, now if you're now the other side has become so extreme that if you're in the center, they look at you as if you're in the extreme. But
Yeah, it is.
I try to be like, I got into this. I don't know if he listens to this podcast or not, but like the last week, like I got into a pretty heated debate with one of my friends about Israel and Palestine, and I think he kind of got a little agitated because everything I was saying, I was able to back it up with statistics and documentation. And here's an article that says exactly what I just said. Like, I try not to govern myself with feelings. I try to govern myself with facts and data. And where you might feel one way about this thing, or you might
Right.
just blindly believe what's being said on TV, that's, especially these days, is rarely the case.
Yeah.
And so, but I can't, like, I do feel like I have an obligation to be honest, and that may come across as being political sometimes. But, you know, I've said this on the show before. I personally don't like it when people, they'll say, "Oh, I hate to get political," but like, no, by all means, get political. Like, we don't have to go get in a fist fight about it. But my political test has always been, when you go to the bathroom and you poop in your toilet and then you flush your toilet, do you like the fact that the poop disappears from your life? And if the answer is yes, then you are into politics, because politics made that happen, because it all comes down to uh, zoning and public works and you know, I could go on and on, but if you enjoy the convenience of flushing your poop away, then you are into politics. So I don't think it needs to be something that's shied away from too hard, because we talked about it when we talked about the movie Civil War. Like, I think they went too hard at being completely anti-political.
Yeah.
You know, we gave the example that it's like watching a football game between two teams that you don't even know who they are.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's my political stances. My personal politics will probably surprise a lot of people, but also I feel that my first duty is to be honest, even if that means sometimes I have to dip a toe into the political spectrum. So.
And there was a mutual acquaintance here, a mutual friend that brought this up, and this was his suggestion. And I won't, I won't go too far into it, and we don't want to go too far into politics on this one, but it could be a fun topic to talk about later. And basically said the winning party has to take the losing party as the VP.
That's how it was when the country started.
Right.
But
obviously it's not.
The first few presidential elections, whoever came in second was the vice president.
Right. So. But obviously it's not. And, you know, it was suggested it should go back that way. And that's interesting. I don't know, because in the current situation, like if Trump wins in November, no, please don't take the old man anymore. Let him go to rest in the home. But it's interesting to say, okay, maybe not the loser is the person, but one of the candidates that were on the ticket leading up to whoever got the nod has to be it. You know, that's where it has to come from. Again, who knows? At the end of the day, all politicians are hot garbage. But
yeah, I think our founders or framers, whatever you want to call them, I think they were pretty smart, and I believe the reason why they did away with that policy was because what they found out was, for the same reason that we were just talking about, that people try to avoid political discussions. When the second place candidate was the vice president and the first place candidate was the president, the entire term would be spent with the vice president trying to like sabotage the president at every turn, and nothing was ever getting done. And they were like, okay, maybe this isn't a good idea. I could be mistaken, but I think that's why they ultimately got away from it, because we were getting away from an era where everybody was an honorable gentleman that cared about honesty and integrity. And as as politics became more political, each side got further entrenched in their party lines, and so when you're vice president, and also when if you wanted to get real extreme about it, if you were the vice president that wanted to become president bad enough, I mean, you could just
just
put
ask Morgan.
poison, some rat poison in the president's sandwich or something, you know.
Just ask Morgan Freeman in the last Olympus has whatever fallen movie series. His VP tried to take him out. Crazy.
Olympus has fallen and it can't get up.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and we go down, we just went down a rabbit hole here for 15 minutes, right? Of talking about something that wasn't really the topic of today. And it kind of plays perfectly to what the topic of today is. You know, folks, I don't know if it's the fact that the Father Time is just catching up with all of us out here, but there are days when I think we've talked about this before, where I am, and it's called paralysis by analysis, but I was going to say it in the correct tense of I am paralyzed by analyzation of the daunting tasks that are on either in my mind, on a piece of paper, on a whiteboard in front of me, and I'm looking at the list going, holy crap. And tackling objectives is something that can really be adapted to everything. Just in the beginning, we were talking about what this show is about, what it's not about. It's not only about one thing, but often we talk about things that can be adapted to many things. You know, adapting and overcoming and prioritizing tasks is a very important thing. And I think over the course of this show, we're going to kind of talk about how that can relate to a medical situation, a self-defense situation, your office situation. I mean, just your house situation, like what it can spread over all of those things probably pretty, I guess, effectively. And I don't know. I mean, I think you maybe even be surprised at how much it can overlap into all different parts of your life. And the other side of it is we may be talking about this and listeners are just like, yeah, well, of course, man, everybody knows, make a list. But there are some people out there that might sit here and be like, wow, you know what? I can relate to that. And yeah, I run into the same problem, and who knows, maybe we'll sit here and put something out that is unique that Jamie does that you can take and adapt to yours, or you may hear something that I say or that Jamie says that you're like, wait, I've got a solution for that. And you leave a comment below and let us know that. And as we always say, comments are welcome.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Oh, nothing.
Okay.
So, you just hit on a huge point. Like this topic can be applied to so many different things. And I mean, you can, the most mundane things like going to the grocery store, you know, you can even make very simplistic analogies. You know, it just getting out of bed in the morning and getting dressed. You know, you can't put your shoes on before your pants, you know, like, or you're going to have to take your shoes back off to put your pants on. So, this can be coming up with a process. You know, you said, I forget what you said, but like a medical emergency.
Oh yeah. Well,
that's, you know, they already have a term for that. It's called triage. But when
right.
people hear the word triage, you automatically think of medical emergency, but I don't know what triage, it's a French word. I don't know what the literal translation is. I'm sure I could look that up real quick, but your mind automatically goes to a medical thing. But, you know, when you're looking at your list of daily tasks, it's the same as medical triage. It's, you know, triage is figuring out, you know, in the rescue swimmer community, we say worst rides first. So we have to, once we assess all of our victims, we have to decide who goes up first, and the worst goes first. And so this can apply to medical situations. It can apply to your finances, to your financial situation. One of the other things I taught for many years before I ever became a shooting instructor outside of the military, but I used to give classes on vehicle recovery and like properly using a winch and properly using all these recovery tools, because when you're winching a vehicle or pulling on a vehicle, those things can get very, very dangerous and very deadly very quickly. I've seen lots of injuries from people misusing recovery equipment. So, but anyway, this applies to that. There's many, not analogies, but like acronyms or abbreviations or sayings or that you can apply to this. You got to find something that works for you. I mean, there's a guy that has a podcast that's, I mean, probably not as good as this one, but he always says discipline equals freedom. That's the way he says it. When his name is Jocko, by the way. So if you've never heard of him,
definitely not as good as this one.
Yeah, but he kind of the same thing, where when somebody says triage, your mind immediately goes to a medical thing. When most people think of discipline, they think of it in like terms of negative reinforcement. Like, if you spank your kid, that you're disciplining your kid. And so, discipline has a negative connotation, but the more disciplined you can be, is his point, the more freedom you have. Because if your alarm goes off at 5 o'clock in the morning and you get up and you have a structured morning routine where you can get up, shower, shave. My granddaddy was in World War II. He said the
shit shower, shave,
shit shower, shave, and shampoo. Yeah. Like do all that within a certain amount of time. And then, then you go to a workout, because like, I think I just have like an outline of stuff, but
but just to kind of touch on that, I mean, well, I guess some backstory where this came from is probably important, and then definitely finish. For the past couple of weeks, on the other side of my world, the Clark Armory side, there has been a bunch of new processes that have been put in place, and everybody tells you to delegate, right? But when you delegate, and it's things that, and it's not even I'm choosing to delegate, it's I have to delegate because I have to rely on this other company that is in charge of this whole process to get it done. And if the first thing on my list of the day involves them, and then it doesn't go the right way, the rest of everything becomes blurry, if you will, and I lose focus. And it's trying to figure out the best way to achieve that. Now, in that situation, that's fine, but how do you do that in a situation like we're talking about right here? But go ahead. And so that's where this is stemming from, is personal experience that I'm dealing with right now, trying to work it out. So,
well, when we're applying this to things like the way we manage our time in our daily lives, like, I mean, the biggest excuse that everybody, I'm sure, including myself, including you, the biggest refrain that you hear from people is, I don't have time. Like, well, why don't you go to the gym? I don't have time. Why don't you, why don't you walk more during the day? Oh, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time.
Right.
Well, it's, everything, like, this is a term that I got from the military and from the Navy, is debits and credits. And in the Navy, when we talk about debits and credits, it's used for like loading up a cargo plane or whatever, because it has to do with like center of gravity. And if you take something that weighs this much, it's like if you're holding a weight and you hold it near yourself, it doesn't feel like it weighs as much, but as you move it further out from your center of gravity, you perceive that it weighs more, but the weight of the object hasn't changed. It's further out and whatever. So there's debits and credits, right? Like, and it's finding the balance between making time and wasting time. Like,
Okay.
Again, an oversimplification is, you know, you don't want to go to work. Okay, cool. Don't go to work. Now the good news is you have every day off with no task loading, and you're free to do whatever you want. But you're going to find out pretty quickly that because you didn't go to work, now you don't have any money to do anything with all this time off that you have. So,
but you know what's funny? Well, you know what's funny about that? Let me just jump in there.
Go ahead.
Even when there's been times I can go back to when I was living in Savannah. I didn't know anybody, right? And so that was part of it. But I would sit there and I had all the time in the world on a weekend and I wouldn't have anything to do. And I wouldn't like sit there and say, okay, well, what can I do? I would just sit there like, I've got nothing to do. And again, just paralyzed by, and so I'd be like, okay, well, I'm just going to go take a drive. And I would just go drive to where, like, whatever, a store, and just to go into the store and then walk around, do nothing, and then drive back. So it's funny you say that when when you talk about, okay, great, you have a job and then you're gonna go do stuff. I had a job and I still had I had nothing to do. I didn't want it. It was just it was very confusing. But go ahead, please finish.
No, that's it's laying out like that. That's kind of how I run my task load. Like, number one, like as I've gotten older, and you can say that it's either just purely by virtue of age, and so you can't remember things as well or whatever. I really don't think that's what it is. I just think as I've gotten older, I have more responsibilities because I have my job in the military. Then I have all my kind of side hustles, if you want to call it that, like doing this and teaching firearms and diving and all this other. And so as I've gotten older and have just taken on way more responsibilities that are all all in different vectors, number one, I have to make a list and keep a calendar. And I tell people all the time, like, do not trust me if you come and tell me something and you don't see me write it down or put it on my calendar. Like, tell me again, because if it's not on my list and it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist.
Now,
and
let me ask you, do you use your phone for this, or do you, like you said, calendar? Obviously we all got the calendar in the phone, but you make a list every day. Like you write out a list on so
I do. So that's what I do. I have these like little, they're these sheet. I don't know what size they are. These little sheets of paper. I thought it said on here on my little pad, but when I fold it in half, it's like the perfect size to fit. I don't know what that one is, but I used to carry that's the Right in the Rain. I used to carry the field notes. But I would have the little field notes notebook in my pocket, but then I would still just use these little pieces of paper. So in the military, when I'm in uniform, I actually do have I don't think it's that exact same one you have in your hand, but it's very, very similar. But I still just find myself using these little sheets of paper that I fold it in half, slide it in my pocket, and then at the end of the day, hope like if everything on my list is done, I just throw it in the trash. And if not, then everything that's not gets transferred to the next day. My calendar, I do both. I actually have a physical calendar that's in my kitchen. That's kind of like the master. And then when I'm on top of my game, everything that's on my master calendar does get transferred into my phone, because I love on the iPhone calendar. You can set it for 2 reminders, and like, depending on what it is, it'll remind me a week out or 2 days out, and then I can set it to remind me again 2 hours before or whatever. So,
and I used to use my calendar a lot more effectively, and that's on me. I was just talking about this over the weekend. I'm going camping again in a few weeks, and I didn't realize that I've got another event on Sunday, and the event is after camping ends, but literally going from camping straight to it. And I know that I need to do better about that. And I even said, I was like, man, I wish it wouldn't let me book something if it's already, already in there. But going back to the pad um, I decided to start using that and keeping that in there, not so much for a list, but I use it when I hear something that's interesting. I need to remember something or to keep notes and documents, like specifically with camera, with photography, understanding, when it comes to video settings and camera settings, to be what they are, just so that they're always there in case I lose something or lose a setting when it comes to the camera. So that's basically what I've been utilizing it for. But it's, on, if I open it up one way, it's got that information. Then I flip it over in the other way, like it's got notes from something else in there. But with that, obviously, comes having a pen and making sure you have all that all the time. But that is one thing that I use the whiteboards in my office. And I'm
a huge advocate of the whiteboard also.
Oh yeah. Start there.
But like all of these things, if you're like the Achilles heel on all of these little things is if you're not going to do it. I mean, if you're just, because Chris said to go buy a notebook and put it in my pocket, and you do that, and now your life doesn't magically get better. It's the notebook's not going to fill it. Like this still takes the self-discipline and the structure and the routine. Like, I mean, I think I'm a little bit on the OCD spectrum, because I mean, even the way I put my stuff in my pockets every day is exactly the same every day. And I like, at this time of day, I do this. And that's the job I do in the Navy now. That has been my biggest complaint about it, is that our schedule constantly changes. Like every couple of weeks, our schedule completely changes and is radically different every 2 or 3 weeks. And it just, like, because I'm such a creature of habit, and because I have such a rigid structure by which I live my daily life, completely changing my schedule every couple of weeks, because my job is revolves around training now. And so each group of students, as they're transitioning from kind of one phase of their training to the next, it completely changes our schedule. And then, the training I teach now, we're on an 18-week, it's an 18-week course. So then every 18 weeks, now it's a brand new class, and we have to start all the way back over. And it's this never ending cycle of constantly, I say, like, shaking the Etch-a-Sketch. If there's any listeners younger than 30, they won't understand that one. But, but like every few weeks we have to shake the Etch-a-Sketch and like kind of reshuffle the cards and start over. But all of these things require you to have the self-discipline and the structure to actually use these things. And like, I still have it, the Write in the Rain notebook that's approximately like 5x7 size. And when I was at my last unit, but before I transferred to this command, the training command, I was in charge of like 46 people. And so I bought that like 5x7 size notebook. I don't know how many pages are in it, but it's maybe not quite a half an inch thick, but I had to like split it up into chapters, even because I had 46 people that worked for me, and each person got their own page. So when this person would come up to me and say, "Oh, Senior Chief, I got this thing going on next week. I'm not going to be here on Tuesday," I would have to flip to their page and write it down, write the date down, and the date that they're not going to be here, and the day when they told me. And so, because inevitably when that day came, and I'd be like, "Where the hell is Spearman?" And I'd be like, "Wait a second, let me check my book. Oh yeah, he told me 2 weeks ago that he's not going to be here today. Check." So there's things like that, and there's things that I think, unless you were some kind of genius, you like some kind of super genius, you couldn't keep track of all that much detailed information for that many different people and stuff, unless you had a system of writing it down like that.
So. I agree, but I think it's also very much like a perishable skill. And what I mean by that is, when I was working for different companies in the firearms industry, and I had a rep group that had 15, 17, 20 different reps across the country. Or if they were multiple rep groups that owned different parts of the country, they each had their own notebook. And every time a call happened with them, that notebook would come out and the other notebook would go away. What I've noticed over the past however many years that I have owned Clark Armory and where I'm not dealing with people, right? We're dealing with pixels right now. So I don't deal with that on a a more detailed and kind of drilled down level. I've got multiple notebooks, but one of them is a ZERT notebook. One of them is a Clark Armory notebook. And even today, I had to have a call with this company and flip to the new page. I wrote down the 3 questions that I had to cover on the call. And then there was some follow up after that. But if you don't practice this kind of thing, you lose it. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat that I have definitely lost it and become, I don't want to say less organized, but it takes a couple of extra steps to ensure that I'm not missing things. Because like I said, I'm pushing pixels and not dealing with people. So there's not a lot of follow-up that needs to get done, you know. I know that there's things that need to get done every single day as far as promotions and whatnot. And that kind of drives my day. But there are a lot of things that kind of get lost because I don't do it enough. So I have to start reminding myself, because if you start missing it there, you're going to miss it in other places as well.
That's correct. And just to piggyback off what you just said, like one of my other side hustles or whatever you want to call it, side job outside of the military, I'm a sales rep for Lantac USA. And like what you said, I have the pixel version of what you just said. All these dealers that I manage, each one of them has a little subfolder on my computer that I have a history of all of their I've got, digital copies of all their documentation that they signed, or their dealer agreements, and the copy of their most current FFL, and a record of every purchase order they've ever done. And then I have a subfolder for every email that I've had and who my points of contact are. And this person left the company, so now it's this person. But yeah, like, again, maybe to
reiterate.
No, like to strengthen your point that you made.
Validate it.
Yeah, there you go. Because I already kind of have this type of routine in my life, it made that very sensible and easy to adapt to. And maybe that's one of those things that maybe comes from being in the military, because from day one, when you go to boot camp, here's the schedule. We're going to wake up at dark 30 and we're going to do PT from this time to this time. Shower time is from this time to that time. Then after shower, we have to run to the mess hall, and then breakfast is from this to this. And so, that it's kind of beaten into your head literally from day one. And then there's a very steep punishments for when you deviate or forget something.
Got it.
But one of the things you reminded me of when you were talking about, because things change, right? Like even if you make a list and you do make a plan, like I always kind of every year when the promotions come out in the Navy and more people get promoted to chief petty officer, and they have to go through this initiation process, and we overwhelm them on purpose when they're going through the initiation. Okay. And I always kind of jokingly I'm kind of joking, but kind of not. I'm like, you guys are making this way too hard. Like, this is a really simple 2-step process. Step 1, make a plan for success. Step 2, execute the plan. Like it, and they always laugh when I say that, but it really, obviously, it's more complicated than that. But it really can be that simple in the broad strokes.
Right. And you've heard me say multiple times, that's 1, that's 2, execute the plan was 2. 3 is expect the plan to go off the rails, and 4, throw away the plan. Now, go ahead.
It's as if we rehearsed this, because that's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say, because do you know what you just described? that's very tactical.
What's that? OODA?
The OODA loop.
The
See,
OODA.
God damn. It's like we rehearsed this.
Yeah,
Yeah, the OODA loop.
gosh,
So,
the OODA loop.
I mean, do you know where the OODA loop started?
Oh gosh, yeah, a pilot back in
Okay.
the
Because it was like
1600s when he was flying F-35s.
Well,
Yeah,
somewhere
that,
around like in the 90s, one of these, Jeff Cooper or
yeah,
Masad Ayub or whatever his name was,
yeah,
like one of those guys hijacked it for like tactical, like shooting, gunfighting use, and it
right.
works for that too. But yeah, originally it was an Air Force general. It was James Boyd or John Boyd. I'm
Yeah,
gonna say John. But yeah, he made it in reference to dogfighting in a
yep,
plane because exactly for the reason you just said, like you can have a plan. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna intercept this plane, and then I'm gonna brake right, and then I'm gonna hit the brakes and it'll fly right by, right, and then I'm gonna get behind him, and then I'm gonna go to missiles. But as soon as the enemy does something you didn't expect, now you have to restart the OODA loop, which OODA loop,
right.
for anybody that doesn't know it, and maybe I don't know, is that a do you think that's a generational thing? Like guys that are our age know the OODA loop, but maybe other people, maybe younger people don't.
I
I don't
mean,
know.
it could be. It probably could be that, and it could also be a failure to teach it. I mean, or failure to comprehend it, or failure to care in the younger generation. Could be
Or
all of those.
maybe, yeah, it could be, and all these super high speed tactical geniuses that that think they are reinventing the wheel all the time. Maybe, oh, that's an old thing,
Right.
and just disregard it. But it really is it's still very relevant, and I
Yeah.
think people, it's probably one of those things that people use every single day without even realizing it. But anyway, OODA, it's OODA. It's the OODA loop because
Yeah.
it goes in a circle that never stops. It's
Correct.
observe, orient, decide, act, and then based on what happens once you get to the action part, depending on what happens or what changes, now you restart from it's a circle. You restart back at the O and you observe again, and then you
Right.
orient yourself based on your observation. Then you make a decision, then you act, then you reassess, and then you
Yeah.
restart. But that's that. It's brilliant and it's basic and it works, and it's not just for dogfighting or gunfighting. Like that's literally probably whether you know it or not. That's how you're living out your day. And
And
when you go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish.
I was going to say, when you couple that with like triaging, when you observe, orient, decide, act, and you kind of couple that in with that triage or prioritize and execute is another phrase that we use. Put things in priority, like the things that you have to do, because some things are optional, some things can be pushed till later, some things can't, some things have to be done today. So you triage and you OODA and make a list and make a calendar, and you'll be
Look
on
what
the
you can
Jamie Franks
accomplish.
program in no time. Yeah. What were you going to say?
What I was going to say is, and take this to the being prepared and being a survivalist. Take it now, adapt what we're talking about to then. I think you and I have talked about it. I know that Paul and I talked about it one time. It's, if you're just starting to explore and go down the rabbit hole of this survivalist or this survivalism movement, it can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what do I need to do? Oh my God, do I need to go get a generator? Okay, no. Let's start with, start at the beginning. And it starts with making a list and start tackling it one at a time. Be surgical with it. Understand what the priorities are. Having a full bug out bag and cache of extra weapons and ammunition available in your car and somewhere along the way in your route is nowhere near as important as having a medical kit in your car, or back that to a tourniquet, like
Right.
having a tourniquet.
Well, and we have caged this in many other, we've talked in other podcasts, we talked about the rules of three.
Yes.
That's an OODA loop that nature figured out for you, like
Right.
it's you can only go like 30 seconds of heavy bleeding, 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 hours in generally speaking, in the cold or like, exposed to the elements. 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. So I mean that's an OODA loop and a hierarchy and a prioritize and execute that's figured out for you. But I think I've talked about this before, but I can't remember what. But one of my friends that was a British Army guy, when we were going through survival training, in all like U.S. military training, it's like everything is step one is assess the situation.
Right.
He always said, like, because when you're in a survival situation, I mean, in military speak, you could, your helicopter went down, your plane crashed, something like that, and now you're behind enemy lines and you have to escape and evade, right, and survive. And
Right.
like, because he was British, like his for whatever reason, this always stuck in my head. He always said, like, step one is brew a cup of tea, and he didn't mean literally sit down and start boiling water to brew a cup of tea. That was his way of saying assess the situation, or the first O in OODA loop is observe, like stop, take a minute and figure out what's most important right now. So like you were saying, when you start getting overwhelmed and you're trying to decide in which order to do things or the most logical order to do things, brew a cup of tea, either literally or figuratively.
Right.
But one of the other things you said, going back to my days, and I preface this statement by saying yet again into a microphone and a camera, I am not a Navy SEAL, have never been a Navy SEAL, but I did go through SEAL training twice. But they always say, like, I don't know if this is a Bud saying, but they always said it like, what, how do you eat an elephant? Like
one bite at a time.
One bite at a time, right? Like, because if you focus on this whole humongous element, you're like, oh, I got to eat this whole thing. Like, it just becomes overwhelming, and then you get paralyzed. Right. And so, like in Buds, they talk about eating the elephant one bite at a time, but they say take every week one day at a time, and take every day one meal at a time. So, like, one of the common things in SEAL training is you just tell yourself, no matter what's going on, no matter how bad you're hurting, no matter how miserable you are, like, you just tell yourself, just make it to lunch. Right. If I'm going to quit, I'll quit after lunch. And then you make it to lunch, you get a little bit of food in your belly, you get a minute to rest, and then you're like, okay, I think I can do this. And then after lunch, terrible things start happening again. And then you're like, just make it to dinner. If I'm going to quit, I'll quit after dinner or whatever. And then you make it to dinner, and then your day's over. And then it's like, well, you know what? I'll get up in the morning, I'll do this again. So, take every week one day at a time, take every day one meal at a time is what we would say in SEAL training, but it's the same principle. But the other thing, kind of the last thing I had on my little list of notes or thoughts here is you also, one of the major things that plays, especially now, especially because of this thing right here, you have to be honest with yourself. And, at the top, I talked about debits and credits. You have to, people say that in different ways, the juice is worth the squeeze, or, intake and output or whatever. But going back to I don't have time, but you made your list, you're managing your list, you're OODA looping, you're triaging, you're prioritizing and executing. And now you've made up a whole bunch of time, and now you're ahead of the game. And then this thing comes out of your pocket, and you sit down, and now you've just wasted a bunch of time. And so then, like, somebody comes along and says, oh, did you go to the gym today? And you say, well, I didn't have time. But the truth probably is, you need to be honest with yourself, and you need to realize that you probably did have time. You probably, assuming you did do some due diligence, and you did, keep your nose to the grindstone, and you did make some time, but then you just turned right around and pissed it all away. So another thing is you hear people talk about it in terms of parenting all the time, is like limiting your kids' screen time and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
But I'm telling you, as I sit right here, I set up apps on my own phone where, like, I've given myself 1 hour a day on Instagram. And, like, after that, like, I'm locked out of Instagram and stuff like that. So, because I realized I was wasting way too much time on it.
Yeah.
And so I had to be, go ahead.
I guess it's a blessing and a curse with having, your notepad, everything is, your notepad, your calendar, everything is on your phone. And sure, you go in and you do a grocery list on your phone, and then you're like, oh, well, let me just scroll over to Instagram and let me look at that. And let me go over to Facebook and see what's on that. And, oh, well, while I'm here, let me go check this. And, oh, let me go check and see if the order on Amazon has delivered. It's all right there. And
Yep.
you just go down the spiral of time suck and distraction. Which, I mean, I'll tell you, last night I put my phone on the charger and I actually grabbed a sketch pad. And I mean, I used to draw when I was younger, and I loved it. My niece is a big artist and she likes to do stuff. And at brunch, we were showing pictures of her artwork, and I'm like, you know what? I used to do that. Let me get on there. And so I just did. I put the phone down, and then, what's funny is this is going to be hilarious. I was using a pencil, shocker, not a mechanical pencil, an actual pencil with an eraser.
You had to have a sharpener?
Jamie, I did. And guess what I didn't have? A pencil sharpener. And guess what I did? I went over and picked up my phone and had to, I went over and picked up my phone, went on to Amazon and had to order myself a pencil sharpener.
Oh, I was about to say, Jesus Christ, how old is your phone? It has a pencil sharpener on it?
No. But I mean, but I did get distracted because I tried to do something and I didn't have what I needed. I thought I had one, but I could not find it anyway. So, going just off on a tangent there, but that's the problem when you get into these with the putting all of that information, which is kind of why I have a pad. I like to take my notes on there and not put the notes on the phone. We have a shared note that you and I utilize for show notes, but it's just for reference.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, this is another thing that may sound silly, but in today's day and age, who knows? I find it actually like very rewarding, and I actually feel accomplished. Like last weekend is a perfect example. Like we got off work last Friday. We got off work a little bit early on Friday, and so I had basically a half a day off work on Friday, and then the whole day on Saturday I taught a shooting class, and then Sunday we had off. But I don't, from the time I went to bed on Thursday night, my television did not come on at all until like late in the evening on Sunday, because I had a list of things to do. Like I said, on Saturday I had to teach a shooting class, which meant I had to get up at 5 a.m. I had to go down to the garage. I had to consult that little list to make sure I had everything loaded in the car that I needed for the class, go to the class, teach the class, come home, unpack, put everything away, take a shower, make dinner for my daughter, do this, do that. I sell patches online. I had patch orders I had to package up and put postage on and get ready to take them to the post office, do this, do that. And it's, I was running my list and I was prioritizing and executing and OODA looping and through all of that, I'm sure my phone came out of my pocket a time or two here and there to look at Instagram, to look at Facebook. But like I said, I do try to limit myself to an hour a day on both those things. So it just specifically because I will, and I think everybody will, if you allow yourself to waste more than an hour on Facebook and Instagram. I think most people, I don't know if this is something I put on my phone or if it's just a feature of the iPhone. Like I can pull it up and see exactly how much time I've spent on Safari and how much time I've spent on Facebook and how much time I've spent on Instagram. I don't know if that's a thing I put on the phone or if it's something that it just has.
No, I think that's native to the iPhone. I think it's just the screen time.
But anyway, I actually felt proud of myself that my television stayed off for like 3.5 days, and like on Sunday evening I finally decided to turn my TV on to watch something, and that made me feel good about myself.
So. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because the TV actually, when you can find something good to watch, takes me away from the phone. Like and it's kind of what I know is if it's a good movie, entertaining movie, or a show is can I do I not pick the phone back up to see what's happening in the world, or do I just focus on what I'm watching? There was a series that I just found that came out in 2020, and I started watching it, and it's a Stephen King novel, and I was like, I don't ever remember hearing anything about this. It was only on for one season, and it was really, really good. But you know, to sit there and knock out task number one and get through the end of the day and try and complete them. Is the goal every day that you make a list to obviously complete everything that's on that list?
Mine?
Yeah.
No. Well, actually, sorry. Yes. Because sometimes things do get pushed. Sometimes when I'm getting close to the bottom of my list and I take a look at what's left, okay, well, the post office is going to close in 15 minutes. I can't do this one because it's going to take me longer than 15 minutes to get this thing packaged up and take it to the post office. So that's going to have to get pushed to tomorrow. But I initially said no because I know that happens a lot. But actually, when I do make my lists, my goal is when I make the list, the goal is to complete everything that day. But I also know it's a regular occurrence that it doesn't happen, and so it just gets pushed to tomorrow or whatever. But
And I'm going back to the days that obviously I worked for a company, and you know, pass this knowledge on. I'm sure people know this, and they probably do this regardless. If you're going to start tackling these goals, and let's just go back to a prepping situation, and you want to get into this, set SMART goals. And SMART obviously is an acronym, and it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. So,
critical.
yeah, you don't want to have a list of 100 items for a day and they're all pretty labor intensive or time intensive, because you know that you're not going to achieve that. So attack them smartly, if you will, and break them down so that you can achieve them. I don't know about you, but nothing feels better than when you have that list and you get to that last item and you cross it off. You feel so accomplished and just like, okay, good. You the rest of the day is either free thinking or preparing what you need to do the next day.
Yep.
Always be kind of searching for that next task, that next list of tasks that need to get done. And listen, I know multiple times a week, I know that laundry is on my list. And every day I like to make sure that one gets transferred over the next day, because there is a shit sandwich on every single person's list every single day. But sometimes you just got to take the first bite and get after it. But I don't know.
And a lot of times that's what it is. It's the first tip of the domino, and it's the paralysis by analysis, because you're not eating the elephant one bite at a time. You're looking at the elephant in its entirety, and it's hard to muster the energy and the focus or whatever to get that first thing done.
Right.
But this is another saying that I've used my whole career in the military, and it's success is a trend, but so is failure. And it's like when I was a rescue swimmer instructor, we would see that with the students is once you get a win, you want to start stacking up more and more and more wins.
Yeah.
But as soon as you let yourself fail and you let yourself off the hook, then it also becomes easier to let yourself do that. If you once you break down that wall in your mind that, oh, well, I failed at that, but you know what? It's okay. As soon as you let yourself off the hook, it becomes really easy to continue to let yourself off the hook. But as soon as you start building some positive momentum and you start stacking up some wins, the human psyche wants more.
Yeah.
Once you get a taste of victory, and victory in in the form of checking something off your list, going to Home Depot. I don't feel like going to Home Depot.
Yeah.
But just make yourself do it, get that W, and then it makes it a lot easier to start stacking W's,
Yeah.
So.
And listen, folks, as we get to the end of these episodes and these points, you kind of get to a spot where you're just like, okay, we could take this to the next chapter and talk about how this pertains to a self-defense situation, or a medical situation, or even a survival situation that's not firearms related or medical related. You know, you get stranded on an island, and what's the first thing that you need to do? And we talked about that, the priorities of survival. But we don't go there. We may come back and talk about it again down the road, but these are just meant to get you thinking and get you looking at it saying, okay, how many times a week, a month do I not check everything off a list and I'm just passing things over to the next day? Am I doing it because I'm running out of time, or because I'm just running out of desire and I just don't want to do it anymore? Those are mental checks and self checks that you need to do. I do them. And like I said, I just openly admitted that I kick the laundry over to the next list almost every week. And then I get to a point where I'm just like, just go down and do it. And you get it done. So, but I've also have been
and you don't have
dealing
a
with
13-year-old daughter that
right.
has her own laundry
Exactly.
situation that's extra
Right.
special.
So, and I've just been dealing with, like I said, this struggle over the past couple of weeks, because every day and every week has always presented me with something that is challenging right now, whether it's challenging for me to get it accomplished because I can't think of a solution, or because I am dependent on somebody else helping me with the solution. It's a real thing. And what I will leave this episode with is reminding people that, there are a lot of people that deal with this, and eventually you'll get through that hurdle, that mind block, or whatever that block is, and get through it. But just don't give up. Just keep pushing until you figure it out. So, but as always, we appreciate your time with us. We thank you for listening, for sharing this information, for passing it on so other people can absorb it. And until next time, you guys stay safe out there. And Jamie?
You just hit one of the things I was going to hit. Like, if nothing else, maybe you guys that are listening, maybe it helps you to hear that like other people have these issues too, of forgetting stuff and procrastinating. And I'm good at making up time, but I'm also bad about wasting time, and these little roadblocks that I had to build for myself to stop myself from wasting time. And if you're a person that you've got a lot going on, and you're just a generally disorganized person, start simple. Start with just making a list. Again, speaking for myself, last week made a list, and just by writing it down and just seeing it all on a piece of paper in front of me, I realized, oh, wait a second, I can do like 5 of these at one time.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's something just as small and simple as that suddenly made my whole to-do list seem way more doable. And I suddenly became more motivated to do it. So just keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep.
And yeah, I like I said, if nothing else, maybe it helps to hear that like everybody else struggles with this stuff too. So that was all I had for the wrap up. And so I'll just say it's easy to be hard. It's hard to be smart. And maybe being smart is just something as simple as making a list.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, until next time, ZP002 out.